Hi, everybody. This is Stan Ajami with ICF Colorado, and I'm here today with Master Coach Zora Boas, who will be our speaker for our November 14th chapter meeting called The Way of the Coach, Beyond the Core Competencies. So many of you already know Zora because she was an active member of the ICF Colorado community for many years. She's an award-winning leadership expert with over 35 years of coaching experience across 100 countries. She's a pioneer of the profession. Zora founded her first coaching business in 1987, several years before the start of ICF. Alongside her work, with corporate and institutional clients worldwide, her Life Dance Academy and community provide ICF accredited coach education and a space for coaches and leaders to grow together. Through the cultivation of potent presence, embodied learning, timeless connection, and enlivening growth, Life Dance programs have co-creative conversations at their heart, guided by the motto, live your dance, dance your life. So Zora Boas, welcome, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Stan. Very happy to be with you now, and especially to be with our community in Colorado in November.
Yeah, great. And so I know you a little bit, and some members know you more, and some members don't know you much at all. I'm just really curious how, tell us about yourself. How did you get to be where you are now, and both in terms of your coaching practice as well as your journey through ICF Colorado?
So, as you can see from my silver hair, I've been around for a while, so there's a lot to tell, and I'll try to just pick out a few salient details that may be of interest to you and the rest of our colleagues in ICF Colorado. I guess, the first thing to say is that I started coaching very young. Sometimes people ask, how did you become a coach? Or when did you first get exposed to coaching? Or how did you get interested in coaching? And I think back maybe to when I was in my early 20s, and that was indeed, quite a while ago. And the coaching profession didn't exist as such, but I was really studying in a lot of depth and really with others, pioneering this thing that then became the coaching profession. People sometimes talk about have a rather linear idea of how coaching started. And there are some very narrow narratives out there, which are frankly just mistaken. They're not correct, because of course, like all innovations, it was springing up around the world in different places, different communities, different conversations, at the same time. And so coaching, like any other innovative kind of event in the world, came about in that way as well. It was non-linear. And so I was very much a part of those early conversations as the profession was starting. But then I thought, well, okay, when did I really start? When did it really begin? And so I thought back to my studies. I actually chose anthropology as my academic discipline early in life because I wanted to understand human beings, and especially to understand human beings as cultural beings. But then even before that, I was really exposed to the growth movement and psychology because my own father was one of the pioneers in the growth movement. And so I was growing up in the 60s and the 70s, and coaching was really how we spoke to each other in our family. So then I thought, okay, I guess I was kind of exposed to coaching when I was a small child. That was just how people spoke to each other. And then, of course, I go back through the generations and think, when did it really begin? It began before my living memory, my own engagement with coaching. And, who knows, maybe it'll continue. My engagement will continue after my death, which I hope will be quite a long time from now. I did set up, as you mentioned, when you kindly introduced me, I did set up my own coaching business in 1987. And at that time, people really didn't know what coaching was. They'd say, oh, what sport do you coach? Or what animals do you coach? All kinds of things. And so I had to do a lot of educating. I had to do a lot of talking to people about what coaching was. And then gradually, it became an international movement and established itself somewhat as a profession, although still not a regulated profession in most countries around the world, with the upside and the downside of that. And then, of course, eventually the International Coaching Federation, as it's now called, was founded, and other professional bodies. And I became, over time, involved in those as an assessor. I served on the global committee as co-chair for credentialing. I became involved in updating the coaching core competencies. And of course, as an anthropologist, especially bringing diversity and cultural awareness into those. And I'm also a dancer and a dance therapist, a dance movement psychotherapist by training. And so bringing in that somatic awareness and body work into coaching, they've been quite significant in my own path. But I became quite involved in assessing and standard setting in ICF Global. And then ICF Colorado, I remember showing up in Colorado in 2018. I'd been coming there for about 10 years at the time, pretty regularly, about once a year. But then I kind of took a one-way flight and showed up. And that first meeting, I just felt so welcomed. People were so warm. And in fact, that very first day, that evening when I was at the monthly meeting in Denver, I was invited then to join an education team for the leadership of ICF Colorado. And so I joined Suzanne Mariner and Carl. They were the co-directors of education at the time, and we became a team. And over time, we grew that. We developed the concept of the unconference, and I brought in some of my experience and expertise to that. And then, of course, led a number of learning groups, and so got to know very deeply some of our colleagues here in ICF Colorado, which has been wonderful. And I still feel involved, even though I haven't spent so much time in Colorado over the last couple of years.
Oh, thanks for sharing all that. And thank you, as current Director of Education for ICF Colorado, I thank you for really establishing the education programs, in the late teens for ICF Colorado, and being a leader in really developing what we are now as an education in terms of the education within our community. So thank you.
Thanks for saying that, Stan. I just want to say that it has been very much teamwork, and I do think that teamwork and different voices and different perspectives coming together with real leadership and dedication is partly why ICF Colorado has such a wonderful educational offering.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. In terms of, speaking of education, on November 14th, the way of the coach beyond core competencies intrigues me. The title intrigues me. And you mentioned also, you're a dancer, you like body work, and I'm just really curious, what is it that you're planning on sharing with us? What is it you're passionate about?
So I thought I would bring the way of the coach this time because, I've shared a lot of different, more specific parts or perspectives of my work over the years with ICF Colorado colleagues. I didn't mention, because I kind of thought it went without saying, but I probably should mention that I have been coaching people in leadership roles and providing often kind of transnational corporations, very large organizations and institutions around the world. Together with my team, I've been providing them with executive and leadership coaching for all of those years, since 1987. And so through that, some of the work that I've developed is quite specifically geared towards maybe leadership coaching, executive coaching, how to do holistic work in a corporate environment, how to give and receive feedback effectively, a lot of things that are quite specific. And of course, I do have a coaching model via vocation integration alignment that I teach through my own accredited coach development programs, coaching education programs. However, in a way, underpinning or overarching all of this is a kind of ethos and a way of being that I'm calling the way of the coach. And the reason that I think this is so important, and it's so important to think and feel and act beyond the core competencies, is because to some extent, one of the downsides of the development of standards and professionalization of coaching, which of course I support fully and have been very much a part of, one of the downsides is that it can become a little bit like a set of techniques or rules that people follow. And so there are people who consider themselves coaches and who are skillful, who are nonetheless bringing to their coaching a life attitude, an ethos that I would not recognize as a coaching ethos. They're, in a way, while they might not see themselves that way, they might be quite transactional in their approach. They might feel that they're there to deliver something through a set of techniques or through the use of certain skills to their client for the satisfaction of the client who is paying them. So quite a kind of transactional relationship. Whereas I think in ICF Colorado as a community, one thing that I've really noticed is that many of us, maybe all of us, share a kind of commitment to coaching as transformational. Transformational not only of the individual client, but potentially of others whose lives they touch. They might have a team, an organization, a family or community that they as a client are involved with, and potentially in sometimes quite a subtle way, transformational for us ourselves. And so then the question arises, what makes coaching transformational? What makes coaching really make a difference? Not just a little difference, somebody hoped to achieve a thing and then they achieved the thing, but perhaps a difference in how somebody perceives the world, how somebody speaks to themselves, how somebody takes on a willingness to really be co-creative in their conversations. Coaching, of course, is a co-creative conversation. We and the client are in a kind of partner dance, a verbal partner dance. But we also, I believe, have a role in giving people an experience of what it's like to have a coaching ethos. And so the way of the coach is a reference to our need, I would go so far as to say, to look at ourselves and to ask, what ethos do I bring not only to my coaching sessions, but to my life? What kind of an attitude, what kind of deep beliefs and values underpin my skill in the coaching core competencies? What kind of way of being and quality of presence and willingness to take emotional risks, to not know, to co-create genuinely? What kinds of willingness to be in that dialogue with the other actually shape the way that we coach? That's important, not only because the way of the coach, our way of being in the world as a very specific ethos and way of being, actually, of course, shapes the effectiveness of our coaching as a transformational conversation, but there's also a kind of side benefit. Maybe I'll say more about that in a minute. There's a side benefit that comes from really standing in and having clarity in the way of the coach.
Okay, well, now you have me very curious, and maybe my next question actually leads to that, what you're about to describe, because I'm really curious. You talk about this ethos, and clearly there's some experiencing of this that we all need, and I'm curious, what are we going to experience during this? This, by the way, for all of you out there, this is going to be a hybrid event. This is actually going to be live at the Posner Center in Denver as well as on Zoom. So how are people either in the room with you or on Zoom going to learn this ethos and learn what this the way of the coach?
Thank you for the question, Stan. I'm just going to slightly rephrase it, because I would not say that people are going to learn an ethos from me. What they will have the opportunity to do is to explore their own coaching ethos, and to learn a little bit, of course, about how I see my coaching ethos. And hopefully we'll find that there's something in common that we each have when we think about what is the way of the coach, what does that mean for us? But I think what's really fundamental here is that I will create a framework, and we shall, as a community, both in person at the Posner Center and online, co-create a safe space for people to ask themselves, what does this mean to me? For each person to be able to ask yourself, what does this mean, a coaching ethos? What is the way of the coach? What is special about the way that we approach life, the way that we approach interaction, the way that we relate to knowing or not knowing, telling or asking, entering into a conversation where we don't know exactly how it's going to evolve, and yet at the same time we're guided by skills, we're guided by the core competencies, and we're also guided by some principles about how to relate, how to interact, and what is important. So I see this very much as an opportunity to explore. When I said there's a side benefit, one of the things that I shall be inviting people to do is to talk about their own coaching ethos. Now, talking about is a dangerous thing because it can be very cerebral. I'm an intellectual, as I'm sure you understand, but if we're just intellectual or if we're just cerebral, then we can be kind of detached, a bit disconnected, talking about something at a distance. And so this talking about the way of the coach and what it means to each of us needs to come from within each participant in this event. So whether they're live or whether they're online, I'll be giving some prompts and sharing some of my thoughts about this, a little bit about my own experience of working with the way of the coach, and in a sense, discovering the importance of that for myself as a coach working with people around the world. But they'll also have the opportunity to then really go within and to discover through some stories, through some interaction with one another, what does it mean to them? What does it feel like? What does it look like? What does it sound like? And when I say, what does it sound like, I'll also be inviting people to talk about it with one another. And then we'll come back into a plenary for some sharing. When they talk about their own coaching ethos, when you talk about your own coaching ethos, one of the benefits of that is that you can find yourself articulating something that actually feels very personal to you, but at the same time is really reflecting shared values of our profession. And because it feels personal and is grounded in your own experience and your own convictions, you can talk about it easily. Now, when you talk about coaching from within, so to speak, rather than just kind of repeating some cliches that we often hear about coaching, when you talk about what it means to you, there are a couple of side benefits. One, let's imagine that somebody's there who's a very experienced coach. Maybe they've even written a book or two before, and they want to write something, a book, an article, a blog post about their own coaching approach. Through really connecting to their own sense of the way of the coach, it gives them a way to really, with ease and flow, share their particular coaching ethos, their particular vision of what being a coach is. But of course, we also have in our community quite a few people who are maybe newer to coaching, and people who are still maybe setting up their professional practice or developing their coaching business. And there are people who wonder how they can get more clients, how they can draw people in, how they can become magnetic. Now, I do, of course, offer longer workshops and events to really explore that in depth. And in fact, I'll be doing some in-person events like that in Colorado. But on our evening, our ICF Colorado evening, I would really like for everybody, wherever they are in their coaching journey, to feel and to experience that they can articulate with ease and flow in a very natural way what coaching is to them. And the side benefit is that when they're talking about their work, it's not like, oh, now I have to become good at marketing, or now I have to become good at sales, or now I have to become good at describing coaching. No, they can give somebody an experience of what it's like to be in conversation with them. Of course, they're not going to suddenly start coaching them, but they can give that sense. It's like an invitation into the world of the coach, how it is to be in a truly co-creative conversation where you're in that partnering together. And so I'll do some talking. I will invite people to reflect. They will share with each other, and then they will experiment with speaking about the way of the coach in a very personal way from their own coaching ethos. And then we'll come into plenary again and share some discoveries and some applications of that, be that to business development, be that to writing and articulating about their coaching, or be that, of course, most centrally of all, to the way that they actually put into practice their own skill in the coaching core competencies.
Oh, wow. I'm really looking forward to this because it sounds like a real great opportunity for all of us to really reflect on our own coaching and explore what true coaching is and how we can improve the way we coach. So, yeah, so I just want to thank you, Zora, for sharing with us today a little bit about what we might expect, and thank you to all of you who are listening to hear this. This chapter meeting with Zora Boas is on November 14th, 2024. It's going to be a hybrid meeting, so please register online if you're able to join us in person. Register online for in person if you're able to join us in person, and register available. It will be available also on Zoom. We really hope to see you all there. So thank you again, Zora, for joining us and sharing.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you and all of our colleagues in ICF Colorado. I'm just thrilled to be connecting and part of this beautiful community.